What is the airport board and when did you get on it?
So I've been on the board now for about 4 years. You're nominated by county commissioners and they decide who's on it. We have an executive director, Phil Lanier. There are 7 of us on the board, and we make all the financial decisions about any expenditures and the day-to-day operations of JNX Airport. I'll say one of the most surprising things in the last year to most people is that JNX Airport in Smithfield, North Carolina, all year last year was either the 3rd or the 4th busiest airport in this state of North Carolina. For the most part of the year, we were 3rd, only behind RDU and Charlotte in takeoffs and landings. So I don't think people realize how busy that airport is.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden. And today we have, for a second time on our podcast, Ed Aldridge, who works with Riverwild, Johnston County Economic Development Board. He's also on the board of the airport, and he works with the local charity, OneCompassion. And in this episode, we're going to talk about his work with the Airport Authority, what the Johnston County Airport does, its economic impact. We'll talk about the charity working with children, OneCompassion here in Johnston County as well. And if you want to hear him talk about his work with Riverwild and Reed Smith and the development and his work as the chairman of the Johnston County Economic Development Board, go back and listen to the episode that ran a few weeks ago. And it's absolutely fascinating. And we're going to move forward with this episode. We're going to talk about his work with the airport and his work with the OneCompassion project here in Johnston County. I think y'all will find it fascinating. It's a tremendous charity doing an awful lot for people here in Johnston County. If this is your first time following, listening, or seeing this podcast, we do ask that you like, follow, subscribe to the Best of Johnston County Podcast, wherever you are finding it today, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. The Best of Johnston County Podcast comes out every Monday, so check back every Monday for new episodes as they come out. And if you would be so kind as to go and leave us a 5-star review down at the bottom, wherever you're seeing this podcast, it will raise our visibility so more people will become aware of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. Welcome, Ed.
Hey, how are you doing?
All right.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Yeah, that sounds good. So let's start with, I know we did the one before, but not everybody listens to every podcast. What's your name? What do you do? Where are you from?
So I'm Ed Aldridge. I was originally born and raised in eastern North Carolina in Tarboro, Edgecombe County. 1987, after graduating from Tarboro High School, I went to North Carolina State University, go Pack. Graduated from North Carolina State in December of 91. After that, I had a couple of years mulling around, figuring life out, shall we say. And in 1995, I went to work for Gregory Pool Equipment Company, the cat dealer located across the street from the fairgrounds in Raleigh. And I had a very good 25-year career there, tremendous place to work. And about 4 years ago, I decided to make a change. I had been living in Clayton since about 2003. Loved Johnston County. Right opportunity come along for myself and my family to be able to contribute more time to my family and be there for them. And so I went to work for Reed and Jacqueline Smith at Riverwild on Main Street in Clayton, North Carolina. And I can't say enough good things about how much I enjoy being 10 minutes away from my house.
Oh, I know. After you made that drive to Raleigh for 25 years,
yes, sir.
You gotta like not having to go up there and fight that. And of course, I've lived out here 42 and I had my office here since 2000. And I've never had to commute into Raleigh every day for a job. Good thing about being self-employed. And every time I have to go up there and I have to drive back, either to go up there in the traffic or come back in the afternoon in the traffic, I think if I had to do this every day, I'd move. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So anyway, in previous episode, we talked about the development and all the things that Riverwild is doing in the community. But in this episode, I want to talk to you about the Airport Authority. You're on the Airport Authority board. I don't think people realize that the airport is a huge economic engine for Johnston County. It brings in a lot more money than it spends. So let's talk about that. What is the airport board and when did you get on it?
So I've been on the board now for about 4 years. You're nominated by county commissioners and they decide who's on it. We have an executive director, Phil Lanier. There are 7 of us on the board, and we make all the financial decisions about any expenditures and the day-to-day operations of JNX Airport. I'll say one of the most surprising things in the last year to most people is that JNX Airport in Smithfield, North Carolina, all year last year was either the 3rd or the 4th busiest airport in this state of North Carolina. For the most part of the year, we were 3rd, only behind RDU and Charlotte in takeoffs and landings. So I don't think people realize how busy that airport is.
I had no idea. I mean, you think about,
Even our commissioners had no idea.
That is shocking to me. I fly a fair amount, go around. I was in Charlotte Airport this weekend. We have 5 commercial airports in North Carolina. We have Wilmington, we have Raleigh-Durham, we have Greensboro, Piedmont Triad, PTO, we have Asheville, and we have Charlotte. And you're saying that there are more takeoffs and landings at JNX than Wilmington, Asheville, and Piedmont Triad?
Majority of the year, yes, sir. There were months last year where we had between 9,000 and 10,000 takeoffs and landings a day. Sorry, a month. That was our monthly average was 9,000 to 10,000 at times.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea. I knew it was growing, but good gracious.
It is tremendous growth down there, and we're trying to figure out how to manage the growth. We are currently at about 5,500 feet on our runway length. Sometimes that is one of your major limiting factors on what type of aircraft you can bring in and out. I will say that the board has done a tremendous job over the last few years of trying to figure out the balance of general aviation and our hobby weekend type flight guy averse to larger commercial. We have a flight school located there as well, trying to get the right balance of trying to make all of those people happy, because as an airport board, each one of those people, whether it's a hobby guy or a large industry guy or all of our customers, we have to balance to make sure there's parity there and evenness, that all get treated fairly.
Right. And the airport is owned by the county.
Correct.
I think people don't realize that. It's a county asset, like the courthouse is owned by the county.
Correct.
And its purpose is not to make money. It is not for-profit entity, correct?
That is correct. Our focus at an airport, there's only a couple of real ways to create revenue. Basically, it's fuel sales and hangar rentals. That's kind of it. If we want to go out and grow our airport, a lot of times we may have to go to our very generous state legislators, have helped us tremendously in the last few years. Our local legislative leaders can't say enough about Benton Sorry, Larry Strickland, Howard Penny, Donna White have done a tremendous job about helping us get funding to grow the airport and do some of the things we really need to do out there. The commissioners as well, but we have limiting factors on, we have to really watch our revenue versus expenses there.
Do y'all charge to land? Are there landing fees?
So you can see all of our fees online. There's different fees, there's tie down fees, different things like that. But it's like I said, we do have very limited number of places where we can create revenue. There's say-sos where if you want to run a business out there, it's kind of a yearly business permit. We haven't been big fans of takeoff and landing fees as some of the airports have done. But with the dynamic of today's economy, there's a lot of things we've had to look at and weigh recently. And as an airport board, ultimately, it is our goal to keep as many fees and everything down as low as possible. Because again, we're not here trying to make money. We're trying to create the best atmosphere and the best airport in this area for our clients.
I was asked a couple of years ago to consider being on the board, so I did a ton of investigations. I talked to you, I talked to Phil. I went back and read a bunch of y'all's minutes so I could figure out what was going on. Ultimately, I was not placed to the airport board, but I did educate myself a lot about it. And the thing that when I talked to Phil about it and I would read y'all's minutes, y'all basically were just trying to raise enough money to cover your operating costs, which was to pay Phil, pay his assistants, pay the people to do the gassing, pay the people to mow the grass, the janitors, stuff like that.
At this point in time, with the growth in Johnston County, we literally have a waiting list for hangars, and the other regional airports in this area are similar to us, that with all the industries coming in, a lot have corporate aircraft and things like that, and they're looking hangar space and stuff like that. With an airport, oftentimes there's limited area. I mean, around our airport, at one end, we've got Swift Creek and a flood area. We've got 70 on the other. We want to do some growth, but there's some limitation there as well.
Right. But I mean, there is a plan to extend that runway. And I mean, it's going to be environmentally difficult, but there's a plan. I don't know when it's going to happen, but there is a plan to expand the runway.
Yeah, we would love to eventually maybe get it to about 6,000 feet. You can change at 6,000 as another break point where you can get different size aircraft in and out separately. 5,500 works well for us right now and what we're currently doing out there. But we're also looking at our midfield development. We've had to do about a 10 or 20 year plan out there. And our whole midfield where we would add new T hangars, which is for smaller aircraft, but also corporate aircraft would be out there as well. So we really have been focusing on a large 20-year plan out there.
People can own those hangars and then they pay property taxes, just like you pay property taxes on your house.
You pay property taxes on the airplanes too.
Yes, that's true.
But there's also another, people are like, well, y'all get the money. We actually do not get the money off the property taxes. The property taxes on the aircraft go to the county. So the commissioners get that money. Now they may in turn decide to fund certain things and help us, but the property tax for all the aircraft out in that area, and you're talking some of the aircraft out there are multiple $1 million. So it can be a considerable amount of money in property taxes as well.
It's a secret money maker for the county, these airplanes and the sales taxes and stuff. And then of course you've got Duke Life Flight there, and there's those jobs. And then there's Aero somebody, they run flights there too. I don't know exactly what they do. There's been some protesters saying they run torture flights. I don't know if I buy that, but 60 Minutes was trying to do a story about it. I mean, are they still there, Aero Contractors?
Yes, they're still a great tenant. We've had zero problems out of them whatsoever. Duke Life Flight is a tremendous asset out there. We've got other partners out there, Blue Line Aviation, Trey Walters and his group. They're a good group of folks out there doing flight school. Again, we can't get enough pilots, like employees in general through all industries. Pilots are another much needed asset, and Blue Line offers us, a good option there for people to come and get flight training.
And at one point, I know there was a lawsuit between Blue Line and the airport. That has been settled happily. Everybody, I think, is happy. I was happy to see that because we need Blue Line. We need Trey Walters and what he's doing, because that is short-term education to get people to making a lot of money in a short period of time, 6 to 12 months out there. So he does some mechanic type stuff, the flight school. Like, you can go there and get a short-term training and make a lot of money in a short period of time. And that's what we need. You know what I'm saying? We need more of that in this county. And I'm glad that lawsuit got worked out and that he's going to stay.
Yeah. And like I said, the airport in general is just a huge asset. With the corporate growth in this area, we will continue to see corporate flights coming in and out, the fueling of these corporate jets that may take thousands of gallons of fuel. That helps us with our budget. Our airport director has done a good job about going after federal grants to help us with our growth and everything. Our staff out there does a good job. The entire board, really, everybody's on a similar page of understanding and managing this growth and stuff like that. I can't say enough about Ken Starling, our chairman, has done a tremendous job as a pilot and understanding the aviation business. So we have a very good mix of aviation experts along with business experts. And we even go so far as we have a former fire chief out there, Bentley Powell. So we cover the safety aspect. We've got a good mix on that board. And I think everybody's of similar mind about growing that airport for the greater good of Johnston County.
Well, I mean, it is growing. And for people listening, when you see the construction out there, like when they built the new terminal building and stuff, that's not all funded by the county. Most of that is federal money. And then the county has to put up like a 10% match. And then the feds pay for most of the stuff at the airport. The state has a little bit in it, but it's more federal money than it is anything else.
I will say, as of the last few years, again, going back, our state legislators have been tremendously generous. Again, can't say it enough. Larry Strickland, Donna White, Howard Penny in the House in North Carolina, and now Benton Sawyer in the Senate have done a great job about helping us draw funding to the airport out there to help fund our growth and stuff. But yes, a lot of it. Now, I will say this about, I've learned more about airports. FAA aviation rules and regulations are the most prohibitive thing on the face of the planet. If you want to dig a shovel of dirt, it takes about 40 permits and about 50 other people have to okay it. And you got to get each one of them $100 fee for looking at your dirt. So building at the airport is a great idea, but boy, it is tedious. It's very tedious.
Well, and it's like any other federal bureaucracy and everything. Everybody's got to be treated equally. And somebody says, I wasn't treated fairly. And they file a complaint. There was an investigation. And I mean, it just gets to be a mess. I don't know. You got a lot more patience than I do because a lot of that stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, some of it is just ridiculous.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. I mean, a ridiculous would be a compliment to some of the FAA rules and regulations that are out there.
And while I understand it from a safety perspective, the feasibility of some of it, it just seems to really handcuff you as far as your growth and what should you think, okay, this should take us about 18 months to do this project. And I'll go ahead and tell you that project's going to be 60 months minimum.
Yeah, well, and I learned that going back and reading the minutes when I was looking at maybe coming onto the board.
Yes.
And I'm like, I read like 2 years worth of minutes and like half the projects in the 2 years I was reading those minutes still hadn't happened.
Not a shovel of dirt moved.
Right.
Yet.
I mean, I just kept reading about this project. I'm like, at some point when I get to current, this project's going to have happened, and it had not happened.
The struggle to see the proverbial brick and mortar out there is real. It is arduous and takes quite a while.
And when you see the Blue Line Aviation building, the county owns the land it's under, but Trey Waters and Blue Line own the building that it sits on.
And it is a depreciating asset. I don't remember the exact terms of that lease. Eventually, the county will own the building as well.
Okay. All right. So he leases the building from the county.
Correct.
Okay. I thought he owned the building and it happens to sit on land that he leases to put his building
lease
on.
to see, because that lease was done before I got there, but eventually the county owns the building and everything. It's, again, each day that thing is depreciating and depreciating, and the county will eventually own the building.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I'm hoping that, I mean, have you heard, is he still looking at maybe expanding across the street and building dorms?
There was that look. And
I mean, he had a proposal, but I don't know if he's going to do it.
Yeah, and I don't know if that property didn't work out for Trey. Trey's a good guy, and he's always looking at growth and things like that. He's even looked at growth in other states and things like that. Like I said, there was some disagreement there at one point, but since I've got on the board, I'll be honest, Trey has been nothing but amenable to me, always quick to meet with you and accept a phone call. And I think we've been able to work through our differences and move in a positive direction. And I do feel like his business there adds a lot to our county.
Oh, it adds a ton. And I was so happy to see it get worked out and him decide to stay because it's such a tremendous asset. Anytime you can get short-term workforce training in your community through JCC, Blue Line, or whatever, that's what's needed. People don't have 3-4 years ago to college to get a degree. They need short-term training now. And that's what he's offering at a reasonable price. And we need more of that in this county. You know that being on the Economic Development Board. And I was on the JCC board for a while, for 4 years. I mean, that's what we need. We need short-term workforce development training for these businesses. That's what these businesses want. And that's what we need to be able to give. And that's what the citizens need as well.
Yes.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
So anyway, well, the airport, we can talk about the airport all day and night. It's fascinating. Hopefully we'll maybe have Phil on and he can talk a little bit more about the airport too on another episode of the Best Johnston County. You do so much in this community. We can talk about all the things that you worked on, but I want to talk about the OneCompassion charity that you've been working with the last few years. Tell people what it is, what it does, and how they can get involved.
Years ago, when Reed and Jacqueline first started our business and they had their first few years of real positive type results, they wanted to try and figure out how to give back. And they adopted a family or two and this, that, and the other. But as the business grew and flourished, and Reed was from this area, born and raised in the Clayton area, he really thought that saving the world was just a genuinely great ideal. But at the end of the day, we make our bones and we make our living in Johnston County. So Reed's focus, he wanted to save the world, but let's start in Johnston County. So OneCompassion, Reed started with his wife, Jacqueline. They started OneCompassion, and our primary focus is the give back of Johnston County. Families, communities in need, multiple ways to plug in. We had OneCompassion up and going for a couple of years. And then we were very fortunate to hire a young lady named Jenna McKeel. Jenna McKeel now takes the reins and really runs OneCompassion on a day in, day out. Jenna had a tremendous career at Johnston County schools and stuff, and has a great plug-in with the county as far as understanding where some of the needs are in families or individuals and things like that. And we, all year long, at Christmas last year, we donated to about 150 families that we adopted. We have a lot of our partners and vendors that we encourage to come in and adopt these families with us, so you can go shop and understand that need and go out and deliver. We do energy assistance for families in need. We have some work with some of our partners, go out and build handicap ramps. I don't think we have one specific, our goal this year is to find the need in Johnston County where there may be a bit of a gap, where coverage is not right, whether it's from a church or governmental or some other entity, and that there's a place for OneCompassion to plug in there and help families in need. And that's where we really focus.
So if somebody listening to this podcast knows of somebody that has a need, how would they reach out? Is there an application process with OneCompassion? Is there a form? What do you do?
Jenna McKeel does all the vetting. She has got a couple of young ladies that work with her, and she really does all the vetting. You can always go to our company website, staywild.com, and go there and look up OneCompassion. And Jenna McKeel is the person that you get in touch with, and she'll sit down and chat with you. What is the need? And some of the times it's not something we can do, but we may have other partners that we work with, whether it's Harbor House or Habitat. There are different places that we may plug in where we can say, we can't help with this, but we've got a partner. So she does a great job of vetting and getting people married up and plugged in together that really match the needs. And again, I really would like to say a huge thank you to all of our vendors, partners, all of our local folks. Earlier in this month in May, we had our yearly golf event at Drive Shack in Raleigh. I highly suggest Drive Shack in Raleigh.
It's fun. I love Drive Shack.
Yeah,
you don't have to go play the bad ball. You just hit the next one. It's awesome. I love Drive Shack.
You have a great time, and our partners and everybody got to be on a couple of floors together there. And in one day this year, our vendors and our partners were so generous and donated in excess of $400,000 in one day for OneCompassion to give back. And all that money stays in Johnston County. And our give back is just wherever the need is. We don't have a specific, this is what we do.
Okay.
Whatever the need is in Johnston County, if someone were to lose their home this afternoon and they needed somewhere to live or clothing, OneCompassion tries to jump in places like that. Can we plug in with a local church that has an additional need? Is there another 501c that needs some help with something? We also encourage all of our people internally volunteer and put time in. We even go out to local elementary schools and redo landscaping, different things like that. So it's not all about the Christmas or this, that, and the other. It's about the give back too. And we encourage our vendors and partners to get involved. Writing the check sometimes is a necessary part of that to fund some of this, but also just giving of your time is very important in OneCompassion also.
Well, right. And OneCompassion is an excellent group in Johnston County. You talked about Harbor House. For those of you who don't know, Harbor House is a domestic violence shelter in Johnston County that also provides places for domestic violence victims to go free of charge. They also offer a crisis counseling and stuff like that. That's a great group as well. You talk about, another group out of Clayton, Serve the Need, does a lot of the same sort of stuff that OneCompassion does. And they have fundraisers throughout the year, and they help build ramps, and they help pay light bills and stuff like that, particularly in the winter. There's a lot of great groups in Johnston County. OneCompassion is one of them. Serve the Need. Harbor House is great.
Clayton Area Ministries.
Clayton Area Ministries with their food, with their
St. Anne's Church is another large partner of ours, where our farm division has donated over 20,000 pounds of beef last year to Clayton Area Ministries, St. Anne's, and other local places.
Right. And both Clayton Area Ministries and St. Anne's have food. I don't know if you call them food banks. Yeah, I think it's got food banks where people can go and get food if they need it. No questions asked. Many years ago, I helped Clayton Area Ministries, and I always try to give to everything St. Anne's does I sponsored their golf tournament a few weeks ago. St. Anne's has the International Food Festival in the fall. I always try to sponsor that because I know all the great things they're doing. Clayton Area Ministries. I've worked with him many years ago, and the people showing up to get the food might not be the people you think. You'd be surprised at the people that need the help.
Again,
And nobody's passing judgment on anybody, but with these times and the inflation and everything, it's tight. It's tight out there.
it was amazing when the first year or two when I went to hand out things at Christmas, how many people were in need just a few miles from our office. And you would think, as booming as Main Street in Clayton is, or certain areas, the Cleveland area is booming like crazy, but it's amazing to come to this area and go to a home where people really are struggling and to be able to make a difference for somebody. And that's what it's about for us, to be able to plug into our community and our home and make a difference here local.
Right. So does OneCompassion have its own website, or it's just part of StayWild.com?
It's part of Stay Wild.
Okay.
And you can go to Stay Wild and look up OneCompassion. Like I said, Jenna McKeel runs it. We're located at 114 West Main Street. All of our different companies are located in the old paper company building. You're welcome to stop by sometime and take a look, maybe meet Jenna. School counselors, social workers, a lot of those folks meet with Jenna and talk with her to help us identify where the needs might be. Then we try to vet them appropriately to make sure we get the funds and whatever the needs are to the right folks.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's great. And I've seen some of the work that OneCompassion has done, and it's truly remarkable. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of great things in Johnston County, and there's a lot of need in Johnston County. And I think some people, they look at 4042 and they look at Clayton and they don't realize that, but there is a lot of need right here. And a lot of great community groups like OneCompassion plugging in and trying to help there. So anyway, we'd like to thank Ed Aldridge for coming on and being a guest on this edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. As we mentioned earlier, please like, follow, subscribe this podcast wherever you're seeing it, and give us a 5-star review down at the bottom. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.